Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to Mr. Mac. Today, we're diving into the fascinating evolution of macOS, Apple's iconic operating system. From its humble beginnings in 2001 to the upcoming, cutting-edge macOS Tahoe, which will be released in September 2025, Apple has been constantly refining and enhancing macOS to give users a more seamless and powerful experience across all their devices. We're going to take you through every major milestone in macOS history, from its first version, macOS X 10.0 Cheetah, to the brand new macOS Tahoe. Let's get started. macOS X 10.0 Cheetah, 2001. So, it all started in March 2001 with macOS X 10.0 Cheetah. This was Apple's bold attempt to completely overhaul its aging macOS with a fresh, new architecture. The Aqua interface was gorgeous. Those translucent icons and water-like effects were revolutionary at the time. But, despite how pretty it looked, Cheetah was far from perfect. It was slow, buggy, and not very stable. Apple prioritized aesthetics, and that came at the cost of performance. Still, it set the stage for future releases, showing that Apple was serious about innovation. macOS X 10.1 Puma, 2001. Less than 6 months later, Apple released macOS X 10.1 Puma in September 2001. This update fixed a lot of the bugs and performance issues users had with Cheetah. It was a free update for existing users, which was awesome, and it introduced new features like DVD playback and CD burning, making the system much more practical for everyday use. macOS X 10.2 Jaguar, 2002. Fast forward to August 2002, and macOS X 10.2 Jaguar was here. This was a big step forward for macOS. It brought features like an enhanced Finder, better MPEG-4 support, and an accessibility-focused Universal Access API. But the biggest win here was the performance boost. Jaguar made macOS feel a lot faster. Plus, iChat made its debut, laying the foundation for what would eventually become the Messages app we all use today. macOS X 10.3 Panther, 2003. In October 2003, Apple released macOS X 10.3 Panther, and this one was a game-changer. For starters, Safari replaced Internet Explorer as the default web browser on Macs. This version also introduced Expose, which let you instantly view all your open windows, and fast user switching, which made it easier for multiple users to share the same machine. Panther made macOS more efficient and intuitive, definitely ready for the modern web. macOS X 10.4 Tiger, 2005. By April 2005, macOS X 10.4 Tiger was out, and it came with some seriously powerful features. Spotlight became the go-to tool for finding files, emails, and documents in a flash. Dashboard brought widgets to your desktop, and Automator let you automate repetitive tasks. Tiger was also the first version of macOS to run on Intel processors, marking the beginning of Apple's transition to Intel-based Macs. macOS X 10.5 Leopard, 2007. When macOS X 10.5 Leopard arrived in October 2007, it changed the game. Time Machine, Apple's backup solution, became an essential tool for Mac users. Leopard also brought virtual desktops with Spaces, Boot Camp for running Windows on Macs, and 64-bit support. It was a massive update with a redesigned desktop and major performance improvements. You could really tell that Apple was pushing the limits of what an OS could do. macOS X 10.6 Snow Leopard, 2009. In August 2009, macOS X 10.6 Snow Leopard focused on performance and efficiency rather than flashy new features. Apple optimized the system to take full advantage of 64-bit processors, making everything faster and more responsive. Snow Leopard was also the first version to include the App Store, which became a huge part of macOS going forward. OS X 10.7 Lion, 2011. By July 2011, OS X 10.7 Lion was released, and that's when Apple started blending macOS with iOS features. Things like Launchpad, multi-touch gestures, and Mission Control made their way to the Mac. Autosave and Resume were huge additions, letting you pick up right where you left off after restarting. One of the more controversial changes was the new natural scrolling feature, which flipped the scrolling direction to make it feel more like an iPhone or iPad. OS X 10.8 Mountain Lion, 2012. In July 2012, OS X 10.8 Mountain Lion arrived, bringing even more iOS-like features, including the Notification Center and iMessage for Mac. Apple was really working hard to integrate the desktop and mobile experiences. Mountain Lion also introduced Gatekeeper, a security feature to protect users from malicious apps, making the whole experience more seamless across Apple's ecosystem. OS X 10.9 Mavericks, 2013. October 2013 saw the release of OS X 10.9 Mavericks, and it was the first version of macOS to be offered completely free. Mavericks focused on performance and battery life improvements, plus better integration with iCloud. It also introduced new apps like Apple Maps and iBooks. Another major highlight was iCloud Keychain, making it easier to sync and store passwords across all your devices. OS X 10.10 Yosemite, 2014. OS X 10.10 Yosemite, which came out in October 2014, brought a huge design overhaul to macOS, making it look more like iOS. The flat design and features like handoff and continuity made it easier than ever to transition between your Mac and iOS devices. Yosemite also introduced iCloud Drive, which made storing and accessing files across devices a lot easier. OS X 10.11 El Capitan, 2015. In September 2015, OS X 10.11 El Capitan was released, and it was all about making things run better. The new split view feature allowed users to work with two apps side by side in full screen mode. Plus, El Capitan introduced the Metal Graphics API, which improved performance for graphics-intensive applications. macOS 10.12 Sierra, 2016. In September 2016, Apple officially dropped the OS X name and replaced it with macOS to match the naming scheme for its other operating systems. The biggest new feature in macOS 10.12 Sierra was Siri, Apple's virtual assistant, making its debut on the Mac. Sierra also introduced iCloud Drive for syncing documents and desktop folders, and Apple Pay for web payments. macOS 10.13 High Sierra, 2017. Released in September 2017, macOS 10.13 High Sierra was more about under-the-hood improvements. Apple File System, APFS, replaced the old file system, and HEVC video support made it easier to store and stream high-quality videos. High Sierra also introduced Metal 2, which boosted graphics performance and opened up virtual reality support. macOS 10.14 Mojave, 2018. In September 2018, macOS 10.14 Mojave brought a highly anticipated feature, dark mode. It made things easier on the eyes, especially for those late-night sessions. Mojave also introduced dynamic desktop stacks, which helped you organize your desktop, and a host of new apps like News, Stocks, and Home. Customization was the name of the game here. macOS 10.15 Catalina, 2019. In October 2019, macOS 10.15 Catalina was released, and it marked the end of iTunes, splitting it into separate apps, music, podcasts, and TV. Catalina also brought Sidecar, which allowed users to use an iPad as a second display, and for the first time, you could run iOS apps on a Mac. macOS 11 Big Sur, 2020. When macOS 11 Big Sur arrived in November 2020, it wasn't just a design overhaul. It was also the beginning of a new era in hardware. Big Sur introduced a complete visual redesign with flat icons and a more modern look. But the big news was the transition to Apple Silicon and the introduction of the M1 chip. This change massively improved performance and energy efficiency, optimizing macOS for Apple's new ARM-based architecture. macOS 12 Monterey, 2021. In October 2021, macOS 12 Monterey introduced Universal Control, which let you control both your Mac and iPad with a single mouse and keyboard. Shortcuts, which debuted on iOS, made its way to macOS, giving users more ways to automate tasks. Monterey also improved FaceTime, Safari, and AirPlay, making the whole Apple ecosystem even more connected. macOS 13 Ventura, 2022. October 2022 brought macOS 13 Ventura, with Stage Manager being one of the standout features. It allowed users to organize their windows into a sidebar, making multitasking smoother. Ventura also introduced Continuity Camera, allowing you to use your iPhone as a webcam, a great feature for video calls. macOS 14 Sonoma, 2023. Released in September 2023, macOS Sonoma introduced more customization options with interactive widgets and new video wallpaper features. Safari saw improvements, with profile switching and enhanced privacy features. Sonoma also brought a revamped presenter view for video calls, making virtual presentations a lot smoother. macOS 15 Sequoia, 2024. The latest release, macOS Sequoia, dropped in September 2024, and it's all about AI. Apple's new AI tools, like Apple Intelligence, are designed to help with writing and even image generation. Another cool new feature is iPhone mirroring, which lets you control your iPhone directly from your Mac, even when it's locked. macOS Tahoe 26, 2025. Finally, at WWDC 2025, Apple introduced macOS Tahoe. It's got a fresh, new liquid glass aesthetic, which looks sleek and modern. Continuity gets an upgrade too, with features like the phone app being integrated directly into macOS, letting you forward calls, access iPhone features, and more. Plus, Apple is rolling this liquid glass design out across all its platforms, making the whole Apple ecosystem look more unified than ever. That's a wrap on the evolution of macOS. It's incredible to see how far the system has come. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to hit that like button if you enjoyed the video. We'll see you next time on Mr. Mac.